Hi, everybody, and welcome to another Awakening Summit interview. This interview is with the wonderful LaChelle Amos. I've known LaChelle for a while, and my name is Dominique Oyston, and I'm a voice coach, singer, performer, voice visionary, and a leader in understanding the voice of the feminine and reawakening her. And so LaChelle and I, as I said, have had many wonderful conversations about the nature of the heart and the nature of the vision for, oh, now I'm echoing. I wonder why that is. Never mind. All right. So I'll let LaChelle speak. And LaChelle is a heart wisdom leader. She's a peace and conflict resolution specialist. And I'm going to read you her bio because she is very spectacular. LaChelle is an international peace and conflict resolution expert with experience leading teams in the Middle East, Africa, and South Asia. As a founder of the Silence of Sound Yoga, she blends this experience together with her Yoga Alliance 500-hour registered teacher training certification as an international teacher and sound healing practitioner. Just a bit of multi-skilled there. So LaChelle guides women to tune into their own intuitive heart wisdom by teaching them how to resolve their external conflicts and holding a safe space for their own inner healing work. So LaChelle, you have had an extraordinary amount of experience with helping women resolve conflict on a very personal level, but you've had this incredible experience as well at holding whole countries in Hi, whoever's saying hello, whole countries in this space where they can actually find, resolution to the conflict that is just so deeply embedded in the identity of a nation. So how do you bridge this incredible gap with your work? Because to take it to the personal and the microcosmic, and then to have this epic background and experience, what do you think that gives you as that extra edge?
Well, I believe that gives me the ability to work holistically with the women that I work with. So it's working on multiple levels simultaneously. And really, it comes down to two key premises for me. It's one, realizing that conflict transforms when we allow it to do so. And two, that we can be the change. And so no matter which level we're talking about, we are ultimately looking at what's happening in ourselves and how that begins to impact our interpersonal relationships, how that ripples into community dynamics, and then all the way up into an international level. So the work that I do is essentially 4 threads that weave together in a way to provide this holistic approach. So with the yoga and the sound healing, it's about coming into your body. It's about using both the yoga, which is more than just the physical practice on the mat. It's much, much more. So it's using that and the sound to be able to work through any stuck energy, to release any traumas that we might be holding on to in the body. And most importantly, to be able to cultivate a practice of mindful awareness. And as we do that, then we are able to draw in some of that conflict resolution work by looking at what our conflict styles are, how we react or respond in conflict, how we communicate, and then using those shifts of transformation to be able to come into our heart wisdom. So that voice of our intuition, that balance point between all of the layers of our bodies, connecting deep within ourselves, connecting with others, and connecting with the divine, however we define that.
Sounds amazing. You mentioned different conflict styles. So do people have different conflict styles, do they?
Yeah, there definitely are. In the academic realm, off the top of my head, I believe there are 5. Should probably double check that. But we all approach conflict a little bit differently. And that has a lot to do with our conditioning as well, how we were raised. what are the patterns and experiences over the years. So one that I see very often in the women that I work with, and a lot of my yoga students as well, is a pattern of conflict avoidance, for example. And so that often shows with individuals who face challenges in processing their emotions. So if we have a tendency to like bottle up or to suppress emotions, then our conflict style is often going to be avoiding conflict because it feels really uncomfortable and we don't want to deal with it. And then when we bottle things up, if we allow it to stack up too much, like we put so much pressure on it, at some point, it has the potential to explode into a larger conflict. So conflict avoidance is one of the biggest ones that I work with clients.
Wow. Yep, I think I've avoided conflict every now and then in my life until I got braver with my voice, interestingly enough. So that was my way, you know, once I started to get brave here. And I know that you work with being seen and being heard and the confidence to step up in that way. Someone's just made a comment. So avoiding conflict is avoiding the opportunity to change and grow. And that's a nice reframe. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that it is an incredible opportunity to change. Like, how would we know what we needed to change if we didn't feel that edge, if we didn't feel that piece of the conflict? So in some ways it's a gift, but we don't want it to go, I suppose, too far. And you've been able to hold huge conflicts, haven't you, with your work?
Yeah, on lots of different scales. So like, part of the reason why I said one of the key premises that I work with is the reframing conflict to look at its transformative power, because it's exactly like when we can look at what the conflict is reflecting in a situation, then we know where to kind of navigate how we need to step forward. And yeah, I mean, at its largest, one of the programs that I worked on I managed a program in South Sudan that actually was working with migratory nomadic tribes who historically would travel between what's now South Sudan and Sudan. And in both countries, these tribes were often used as militia proxies by both sides, by both governments. And so by working with these groups of people, we were also working with the host communities in South Sudan, because the small little conflicts that they had at the village level had the potential to impact the 12-pillar peace agreement between Sudan and South Sudan. So it's the small little conflicts that are seemingly insignificant from a big grand view that actually have the power and potential to ripple quite wide. And yeah, that's why I love how I'm able, with these 4 threads, with any of the women that I work with, like it's seeing the big picture and the small details simultaneously. And when we're able to do that, we have the ability to transform on multiple levels.
And I'm curious how did that lead you to working in the realm of the heart, to deciding that the place of the heart is the place of greatest, I guess, change and transformation possible in terms of conflict? Like, what was the journey towards the heart for you?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question. And there are lots of different layers to that. Because part of it, I feel, has always been like the approach that I've dealt with, like always expressing love to those who feel like letting people know that they are loved no matter what they feel the circumstances around them are, like that unconditional love. So that's been something that I see as a pattern, like even as a child. And then coming up to it, it's like as it continued to build, and in that capacity as country director in the development and the humanitarian assistance and peace building sector, all of these little experiences were just these beautiful gateways to be able to start to look at conflict from a heart-centered lens. And so like one example that I faced was even like within my team in South Sudan, one of the people who held a management position, I had received a lot of complaints about the way that he was managing the team. And so I went out for a site visit and had a conversation with him. So it was a multi-purpose trip, and he didn't know that I was going there necessarily just to talk to him. But one of the issues that had come up a lot was anger. And so in this conversation, like his emotions just started flaring up really quickly. And at one point in the conversation, he was just so close to my face, his hand raised up, just like as if he were going to strike me. Like I could literally feel the heat of his breath on my face. And it was a beautiful opportunity. I mean, I will admit that there was this level of fear in me, like, oh my goodness, I do not feel safe right now. But it was also this beautiful opportunity for that heart wisdom to really shine through, because in that moment, even despite the fear and that feeling of not necessarily feeling safe, like I was able to use my breath to ground back into my body, which is really important for heart wisdom, right? To feel it in the body. And so coming into the body, using my breath, and then was able to use that layer of compassion to see, like to empathetically understand that he was under a lot of stress and having his own difficulties in managing what was happening. And so seeing that layer of wounding, then I was able to talk with him without raising my voice, without reacting, and finally getting the conversation to a point where where we were able to physically back away, voices at a normal conversational tone. And it's not easy, like it's a practice. All of this is a mindful practice. But the really important part here then is that it's also important to understand that unconditional love and compassion, like that heart lens, so often when we hear about approaching something like conflict through a heart lens, a lot of people think, oh, that's woo-woo. Like, how's that going to get anything done? Well, unconditional love doesn't mean accepting the behaviors. It doesn't mean condoning the actions, but it means approaching the situation with a layer of understanding and without judgment. And that's really, really important in how we begin to look at conflict from a heart-centered lens.
I'm curious about something you said that in terms of safety. You know, very often women don't feel safe enough to say what they feel or to, you know, stand up for something they believe in. And safety is something that I guess we all long for. And my feeling is what you're suggesting is that being an authority in heart wisdom, having the skill sets of heart wisdom actually can help you feel safer to be who you are in the world, you know, and to navigate situations where you don't feel safe to be you. Yeah. Do you have, I'm just curious about that. Yeah, because so many entrepreneurs, so many women are being asked to step up. And if we don't feel safe to, it's quite challenging, isn't it, to step up and to be ourselves and to be and self-realized. And so can you talk a little bit more about the pillars of heart wisdom that help people do that, find that authority?
Yeah, certainly. So the heart is this ultimate connector. It is this grand bridge between, if you look in the subtle body, it's between our lower energy centers, our chakras, and the upper. And the lower ones look at, they're how we relate to ourselves and physically to the world around us, whereas the upper ones are then, we start to get more into expression, more into spiritual connection, more into the ideas. And the heart being the center point of that, the bridge between those, when we are able to come into our bodies, which I mentioned before, which is so important, especially when it comes to safety, that sense of safety and security, which can be easily done by regulating the nervous system through one simple breath, which I've mentioned in the book chapter as well. But inhaling in through the nose and exhaling out through the mouth at the side, connecting with sound, is actually a really, sunlight, is a fabulous way to be able to allow your nervous system to calm down, your nervous system to communicate to your body, I'm safe, I'm okay, I can relax. And so essentially, like, coming into our body and regulating our nervous system, ensuring that we're taking the time and space for self-care, that is an important part of the heart. And it's when we're in those places, that we're then able to cultivate that courage to be able to compassionately communicate our desires, our needs, our values. And these are that heart-centered communication is vital for transforming conflict. So it's first so this. Oh, sorry, I was just going to say it's also the practice of that mindful awareness really comes in, because it's noticing our triggers and our conditioning. So observing those patterns is really essential to get to that point where we can begin to transform them.
Mm. And I'm curious to know, like, say you're a woman in a relationship and you're struggling with communicating in that relationship and you're not feeling seen and heard and loved and valued enough. What are some of the situations that heart wisdom skills can actually help a woman who just wants to be loved more? You know, she just wants to have that experience of being loved and valued and heard on that very simple, you know, beautiful primal level. What sort of skill sets, or what situations do you find it really helps in?
Yeah, so that practice of mindful awareness and tuning into our heart wisdom allows us to feel seen, to be seen. And that also means seeing ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. So accepting, honoring, loving every ounce of this physical being that we're in, right? That is really huge and a big foundational step. It's also about feeling heard. And these things tend to appear the most in our closest relationships. Often our intimate relationships are our biggest mirrors. And by that, I mean that we can really see our own patterns if we're willing to sit with it and to kind of explore, dive deep into what's coming up in the conflicts. But so feeling heard and then actively listening to other people in those challenging circumstances, because they're two sides of the same coin. And then it's also about seeing our own value. And so feeling valued means that we're no longer sourcing external validation. And if you're anything like I am, I call myself a recovering perfectionist. And perfectionism, what I've come to realize over the years, is really about seeking external validation. I was sourcing my self-worth by approval of other people in different circumstances at work, family, relationships, whatever it was. And it's in transforming the small little patterns that feed into that and beginning to fully embody our own self-worth and ultimately to love ourselves unconditionally. That's where we began to see some of the biggest changes.
And what do you think unconditional is? Like, what is it?
It's without judgment, without comparison, without evaluation, and without criticism.
Yeah, okay, so boom, boom, boom.
It's loving it's honoring and loving our heart light, right? And it kind of connects back to what I was saying earlier, that like the actions of someone or even our own actions, our actions stem ultimately from our thoughts. But there's a space for forgiveness in the actions that we perceive as having wronged us, and that goes for ourselves as well. Like if someone's stuck in the mode of self-sabotage, which was definitely a familiar pattern to me in my younger years. Then it's also being able to forgive ourselves. So it's differentiating, it's understanding that the light and the dark are in each and every one of us. And the light, I mean, where we're essentially putting our focus, our attention is on that light to allow it to grow brighter for ourselves and for others. And when we do that, we begin to really connect into the understanding of ourselves as love, not just being able to love someone else or feeling the love of someone else, but being love. And that being is what's so important right now, to like be the change that we want to see in the world, is to understand that we are love.
I'm curious because, you know, like leading with the heart or being in the heart or love has been it's always been seen as a soft skill. Do you know what I mean? A skill that is less effective perhaps than sort of mental strategy and, you know, other practices. And yet what you're describing is that you've been able to hold space with the heart and the skill sets of the heart in a highly charged situation on a, you know, on a country scale. And I'm curious about the fact that, you know, sometimes in our intimate relationships, as you say, they're the mirror, and we feel this incredible charge around certain situations, certain beliefs, and, you know, where our needs are not met. And so would you say that the heart is like, what is it really a soft skill, or is it actually an incredible powerhouse? I'm curious.
It is absolutely an incredible powerhouse. I mean, if we think about it like, there's different ways that we can look at it, and even physiologically, it is incredibly powerful. But which I'll explain in just a sec. But just to look at like the moments when we face conflict, when the uncomfortable emotions begin to rise, like when the intensity starts to build, leaning into that takes vulnerable trust and it takes courage. That's not soft at all. That's not weak by any means. Like, to actually sit with something that is uncomfortable, to stay even keeled when things get really heated around you, to be able to observe your own patterns and be able to respond instead of react, that is absolutely a hard skill. Like, that is, it's not woo-woo at all. and this is, sorry. This is why I, like, obviously I get very like passionate about this.
Yeah, I'm so interested.
It's so important to reframe conflict, because we're conditioned to believe that anything to do with the heart is weak, but it's not. Like, we don't live, our bodies can't function without the heart. And so physiologically, our heart, when we breathe in and out of our heart, like if we visualize that breath flowing even and steady in and out of our heart space, we actually synchronize the heart's rhythm with the brain's rhythm, with the lungs' rhythm, with all of our major organs. Whereas if we stay up in this super analytical place where everything has to be very logical and structured, and don't get me wrong, there's space for all of that, and it's important to also have that balance. But if we're only in that space, then the brain waves compared, like the heartbeat, is very jagged and sharp. So when we actually come into our heart, like physiologically, there's 5,000 times more electromagnetic charge from our heart than our brains. So our brains our hearts are an absolute powerhouse.
Yeah. Amazing. You mentioned the difference between responding and reacting. Can you go into that a little bit? I'm really curious about that too. I'm enjoying this.
Yeah, it's absolutely. Responding requires that mindful awareness, right? It requires that split second of, wait, this like is something triggering me. can I approach this situation from the place of the heart rather than reacting from my conditioning, from my triggers, from an emotional charge? If we're, usually like reacting is like more impulsive in a way, and responding is calculated, isn't quite the word, but like, is that distinction clear?
Yeah, absolutely. That it's considered, it has a considered element. And it also sounds like you mentioned before about the multiple, like the heart works on multiple levels and you work on multiple levels. It also sounds like it includes multiple levels of awareness and intelligence. Yeah. And that's, key to the difference between reacting, which might be from one level of intelligence, whereas responding is multiple levels of intelligence included.
Yeah, that's a great way to summarize it.
So what do you think the most important thing is that people understand about heart wisdom and leadership, heart wisdom leadership?
The most important?
One of the most important thing, a really vital thing.
Okay. So I would say that one of the key pillars, or the key, a key pillar of heart wisdom, heart-based leadership, is understanding that it's connecting in with our intuition. So it's being able to lead not just from the logical, analytical mind, and from the immediate, from the conditioning and experiences that we've had, but then also being able to tap into and fully see, hear, sense, know our heart's intuitive voice. It's the combination of those that allows us to lead in a powerfully transformational way.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And LaChelle, we're nearly at time. What are the best ways for people to connect with you? Because this work just sounds so vital and so relevant for, these women that are here in this summit and these men. We all want to understand the heart more so we can actually lead with the heart more. So we need these skill sets. So how can people best contact you or best hang out with you?
So there are two key ways at the moment. So one would be to go onto my website, silenceofsoundyoga.com. And when you do that, there's a little pop-up that asks you to subscribe to my newsletter. And if you do that, you're the first ones to hear about all my new offerings, deals, and blog, words of love, as I call them in my blog posts. You also get a free guided meditation on the koshas, which are the different levels of our body in terms of the subtle body. And then the other two ways that you can do that are by following me on social media. I say two because Instagram or Facebook, both Silence of Sound Yoga. And I'm also on LinkedIn. So if you're more interested in the kind of the practical application side in terms of conflict resolution, you can find a lot more about that on my LinkedIn profile as well.
That's brilliant. LaChelle, thank you so much. And ladies, I think we should send her some love from our hearts for that beautiful interview. Thank you. Thank you.
And then just to quickly add, if this is of interest to any of you and diving a little more into the patterns that feed into your relationships and whether you feel seen, heard, valued, and loved, I do also highly recommend joining my Unstruck Sound online yoga and sound course. And the next one of those will be running in January. And so there's also options for one-on-one heart wisdom coaching sessions.
I've had a behind the scenes look at that program. It's exceptional. It's beautiful. It's beautiful and it's practical and I've seen transformations. So a really fantastic program. Thank you, LaChelle, and thank you everybody for being here with us on the summit, on the Awakening Summit. And we'll move on to the next interview. Take care, everyone. Bye.